Welcome to Southwest Florida Real Estate Update, hosted by area realtor Jim York and York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. Our show will bring you the most up-to-date information about the local real estate market, featuring leading experts in the real estate field.
Good afternoon and welcome to the Southwest Florida Real Estate Update. I'm Michael York with the York Real Estate Group, and I'm joined today by our host Jim York and his guest Don Ross of Ross Title and Escrow.
Thank you, Michael, for the introduction. Well, we're here with Mr. Ross of Ross Title and Closing. Let's tell our viewers a little bit about yourself.
Well, I have a cold, so forgive my voice. I've been an attorney since 1982. I have a law firm and a Ross Title and Escrow in Naples, 8 people working for me. I'm one of the shareholders of Downing Fry, been in-house counsel for 25 years, and we have a good team of people. Yeah,
it's a great team. I know our clients love you. So today our topic is, we have several different topics,
right.
But the first one we're going to talk about is contingent on somebody selling their home. Doing a contract contingent on somebody selling their home.
Okay, it's something that comes up quite a bit. NABOR actually has a form for it. Mm-hmm. This is one of the new forms that they came out with this year. It's really more of a practical problem from the selling agent's perspective. You got to persuade the seller that this contingency is not a big risk. So what I usually recommend to the agents when they're submitting an offer subject to the buyer selling their other home, give the listing agent as much detail as you possibly can on what's happening with this other home. Do they have a contract? Are both deposits in? Have they been qualified for their loan? The more information you give to the listing agent, the more you're able to convince the listing agent that this is a sure thing, the better off you are. Now, sometimes you might not need to use this if you go to your lender first, like we're always talking about,
right.
And the lender says you're not going to qualify for this mortgage if there's a mortgage unless you sell this other home. Then you can make the strategic decision not to try this addendum, because that makes sellers nervous.
It does.
I mean, they just want a nice clean deal with no contingencies, 10% down, and feel comfortable it's actually going to close. This is an uphill battle, so you got to give them as much as you possibly can. We have it under contract. They've already been qualified by the bank. They got all their money down. It's closing next Tuesday, but we need the money from that to buy this.
Right.
And sometimes I even allow the potential seller to talk directly to the agent in, say, Connecticut, if the house is in Connecticut.
Right, so that's probably more or less for maybe a cash sale, that they got a cash sale, mm-hmm. and that they need those proceeds to go to the next sale or the one they're buying. So the other part was you maybe wouldn't do that because if they have a mortgage contingency and it does not close,
right.
and they need that to close, that's another way of, you wouldn't use that maybe, right?
I wouldn't, because I look at it both, I want to protect, if I'm representing the buyer.
Right.
I want to protect them, and I want them to get the deal.
Exactly, right.
Yeah, so you try to put yourself in the shoes of the seller, and if you see an offer that's subject to them selling some property in Kentucky or someplace they're not familiar with, they're going to be nervous. How can you protect your buyer without making them nervous?
Right.
One way is to give them, a foot of, documents and mm-hmm. details, and here you can talk to the person in Kentucky. This thing is for sure. The contingency, all the inspection periods are passed, the deposits are down, the bank is qualified.
Right.
These people are solid. If you can do that, great. Now, if it's a hot market, if we're in March,
it's not going to happen.
It's not happening.
It's not happening.
So then you have to get a little cute and say, well, and talk to the buyer's loan officer. Will they qualify for this loan, if it's a loan,
right.
If this property doesn't close?
Right.
If the answer is no, well, then you indirectly protect your buyer. And in that situation, which I see fairly often, you got to be careful how much of a mortgage contingency you got. If it's 50% of the sales price,
That's right.
then it may not protect the buyer because they may still qualify for a
Qualify.
50% loan. So,
Right.
communicating with your lender and trying to make this look as clean as possible, or doing as much as you can to calm down the seller so they feel it's comfortable.
Right.
Because sometimes they meet each other
Right.
when the property's being shown. They just like each other. And the buyers, have a young family and cute kids, and
Right.
the
They
sellers are an elderly couple, and they really want them to have it. Because I have a son in Atlanta. He's going through the same thing, buying a new house with his 2 kids and his wife, and the seller is an elderly man whose wife is dying,
Right.
and they want him to have it.
Have it.
So sometimes you develop that
Rapport. Right.
and sense of comfort that this is really going to happen. And what would it take to make Jim York feel comfortable if he were the seller?
Exactly. That's you
What would you want to
yourself
know?
on the other person's
You always
right.
put yourself in the other person's shoes,
That's
and,
right.
and the more willing you are to disclose and let them talk to people, the more trusting they are of you. And I think it too, it's again a function of what time of year we're in. If you're in the middle of the season, they're not going to take
No,
this
they're
chance in a
not.
million years.
So I think we've explained that pretty good to our viewers. The next thing is multiple offers.
Multiple offers are governed by the National Association of Realtors Code of Ethics and Arbitration Manual. This thing. Since I'm the attorney at Downing Fry, have been for a long time, I obviously have to have one of these things to deal with all the issues that come up over the years. And they actually tell realtors how to handle multiple offers. Legally, you got legal requirements, and again, sorry for the voice,
Right.
legal requirements and ethical requirements. The legal requirements are dictated by your listing agreement, because there's a portion of the listing agreement where you have to check off on line 59 whether or not the broker can tell other brokers whether or not there are other offers on the property. 99.999% of the time, the answer is going to be yes, because the sellers will want a bidding war.
That's right.
I mean, if I listed my home with you, I would love a bidding war. The more the merrier.
Right.
You knock yourself out. Make your best offer by 5 p.m. tomorrow, and I'll decide. So it's generally good financially for the seller. But sometimes they don't want that, and it could be, again, like with my son up in Atlanta. They want to sell it to him.
Right.
Or when I bought my house from my father, he didn't care who came along and offered whatever.
Right.
My dad was selling it to me. So you get situations where they're friends, or they feel, and it's refreshing. I gave him my word.
Right.
I'm going to sell it to him. That's it. I don't care who offers more money. And it's kind of nice in this day and age that people are like that. But those are the exceptions. Generally, you'll want a bidding war. To supplement that, once you get past the bidding war, and you never tell them what your price is.
No, you don't.
No, you just say, make your best offer. We have multiple offers by such and such a time. And again, it's 2 pages in the manual. It governs all the realtors in the country. How you do it in different situations that come up. There's a lot of misunderstanding, frustration. You get buyers who feel like they've been sold down the river because my offer was for more money, and how do I know you submitted it, and all that. And so I tell the agents, you got to submit every single offer, even if the contract's already signed.
Right.
There's cases on this. Submit every single offer and save copies of what you submitted so you can prove it,
Right.
because they might file an ethics complaint against you.
That's right.
I mean, if you get somebody like my dad who sold it to me rather than to somebody else, and actually my father sold the house to me for a lot less money than what he was going to sell it to somebody else, because I'm his son.
Right.
You get that a lot, or often enough. The other agent's just not going to buy it. They're not going to understand why their contract offer for more money was not accepted. So they they think you're dishonest and you're just trying to get both sides of the
Isn't the
commission.
best thing, what we usually do, us as a group, I think we do it right, is we give everybody an opportunity by noon tomorrow
Right.
or whatever to submit your best offer, and at that point, the seller makes the decision on what he wants to take.
It's a lot of psychology. If you put a short time limit on it,
Right.
sometimes it's good to increase the anxiety
Right,
level,
right.
because then they'll make an emotional decision, which purchasing real estate is almost always emotional. So if they have a short timeline, and I'll use my daughter-in-law on this, again, the son in Atlanta, when they bought their first home, she had just given birth to their first child. And and they got notice that the owner of the condo they were renting was going to sell it.
Right.
So she gets me on the phone, and I want this condo, and give me my son, give me my son,
Right.
give me my son. I get him on the phone, and you take care of it. So you get that quite a bit. If you can raise the level of anxiety, you're going to get somebody like my daughter-in-law, who, I want that house no matter what, which is the way she is. And of course, now they're buying their second home after they've had their second child, and I tease her and say, I hope this isn't a thing. Every time you have a kid, you're going to buy another house. But yes, the multiple offers is governed by this. You want the best price you can get. You talk to your owner. Even after the thing is signed, you submit any offers, because that will affect how a seller responds to inspection requests, or if the seller is willing to terminate the contract because of a financing contingency or some other contingency, like the sale of another home.
Right. We're going to take a little short break here, and we're going to be right back, and we're going to talk about backup offers.
Thinking of buying or selling a home in Naples, Marco, Bonita, or Estero, Florida? Think of the most experienced York Real Estate Group associated with the #1 brokerage in Naples, Downing Fry Realty, which produced $1.9 billion in sales in 2014, controlling 43% of all transactions in Naples. Jim, Michael, and Morgan York make up the York Real Estate Group of Downing Fry Realty. With over $250 million in sales transactions, they can offer you the expertise and trust you want and need in a realtor. Call them today at 239-273-6727 or visit their website, www.naplesyorkrealestate.com.
Welcome back. Don, let's talk about backup offers in our last segment here. I know we've had some situations. First of all, let's tell our viewers that in MLS, when somebody puts an offer in, the contract is a contract, everybody sign it. It should go into MLS pending or pending with contingencies.
Absolutely. And again, I mean, I've run into this. I've had agents have ethics complaints filed against them, and they've lost. The rationale behind this is, if Jim York has a client who wants to spend a certain amount of money, and you look through MLS and you see that this property is available,
Right.
and you bring your client to the property, and they fall in love with it on the spot, you've been kind of deceived. You have been deceived. You run the risk that the client will, or the customer will fall in love with that property. You'll be, I'll use the word irritated, that the other agent was clever with you.
That's right.
Or deceptive. Because you run the risk that it'll be a turnoff for the buyer, and they'll walk away, or they'll say, well, look at something next year, and I can't get this property out of my head. So I know from firsthand experience it's an ethics violation. I've seen agents be sanctioned for it, and it's just a matter of being fair and open and honest. If there are contingencies, you need to put it in MLS, which is the multiple listing service.
Right.
The realtors all look at it. I actually don't look at it because I'm not a realtor, but you do have to put it in pending with contingencies. I do recommend that if you're going to have a backup contingency to a contract, that you retain the right to have the seller modify the first contract. Because I've read cases on this. What happens frequently is you have the initial contract, then you have the backup. A backup is a contract that is subject to the first contract not closing by a certain date.
Right.
Okay, for those who don't know what that is. And again, having that backup gives the seller more leverage with buyer number one.
That's right.
When the buyer is saying, I want a new air conditioner, or I want this fix or that fix, buyer number one knows that there's a buyer in the wings, so they can't get too aggressive. But because of the cases I've read, you want the seller to have the right to modify the first contract, because it's not uncommon whether there be a 1-day or a 2-day delay in the closing date, and people have sued when they've delayed it a day because there was financing, the funding's coming from another state, and it just didn't get there. So buyer number two, attorney from some other state, it always seems to be attorneys, sued in this particular case because the seller gave buyer number one more time to close.
Right.
Says, wait a minute, they didn't close on time, they broke their contract, you should have sold it to me. And now you have two people wanting the same property. So we have addenda that cover this sort of thing, and again, when I talked to one of the trainers at Downing Fry, in the context of our conversation, I said, I recommend adding the additional language that the seller has the right to modify the first contract to cover those 1 or 2 day time periods you might need. You get somebody from the Northeast who is 1 day late. In the Northeast, time is not of the essence for closing. I mean, they don't have time of the essence for anything up there. So for them, it's normal for somebody from New York, say, that, okay, we have the closing, today's the 31st, it might close next week sometime. That's normal in New York, it's normal in Massachusetts or Connecticut or New Jersey, that's normal. So you got people from another state coming here, and it doesn't close on the exact day. They don't get that they have extra time. Because back where they are, they get the extra time. So you need to add that to protect yourself. You save copies of everything, obviously, but that's essentially how the backups are handled.
Yeah, I think this has been a really good show for describing, because these have been a lot of problems that I think people are asking, or realtors are asking, or even buyers or sellers. So I think we've covered a lot. That this topic has been very good.
Well, if I could add one little thing, you get agents who don't want to put it pending with contingencies in an MLS, because if you're looking through MLS and you have somebody who's interested in buying a $500,000 condo or $1 million home, you're not going to show them a place that's already under contract.
That's right. I'm not.
You get their hopes up.
Right.
They think they have a shot. They don't have too much of a shot. They're essentially being used to leverage buyer number one into being a little more compliant with his inspection requests and things of that sort. Waive that financing contingency, and there's buyer number two in the wings. So they're more apt to take the risk and do that when there's a buyer number two in the wings. So you're being, I hate to say used, but you kind of are.
You really are. Well, Don, I appreciate you coming on the show today while you're got a little cold here or cough from your trip.
I hope I was coherent.
Yeah, you did a wonderful job.
Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in today.